First day in pads, some good, some bad. I think obviously you can teach a lot more and learn a lot more when you go full pads. We only did about 10 minutes live, 10 or 15 minutes live, but there was a lot of good evaluation coming out of it. And as I told the team, I saw some pretty good moments. We looked like we were competitive and playing with an edge, and then I saw too many periods of softness, and we'll have to get that fixed.
So, Rich, I mean, in your experience, how long does it take for you to get an evaluation on where you are? I mean, I know it's not a day. I doubt it's even a week, month,
usually
6 months?
The whole spring.
Uh-huh.
I think that's and there's multiple things you wanted to get done with spring, evaluation, but also the teaching of your system and schemes and technique, and then how we operate. So the first spring's always the hardest and always been the ugliest everywhere I've been. That's why the spring game is, we'll have a little fun, we'll do some stuff out there and engage with the fans, but we're not going to do a true scrimmage or game from that standpoint, because we just have so many other things we got to get done in spring.
The rules have changed. You obviously you can't hit the way you used to. How much tackling do you do now?
Not as much as before, but that's probably not a bad thing anyway. You know, a lot of times in pads you're doing thud, and our guys have to learn how to do a thud in a tag practice, especially if they want to go on the next level, go in the NFL. I mean, you got to learn, how to thud, and thud is, basically playing football, staying up high, but not taking guys to the ground. We don't cut tackle, we don't cut block. We're not doing any blow up or cheap shots or anything like that. And so I didn't see any of that today, so that was good. But we're still got to learn when we were doing thud, it's not half speed. I think when you don't go live, sometimes you don't go as full speed as you need to. So the key is to teach our guys to go full speed, but yet not always tackling. And that's going to be probably take 3 or 4 practices.
And then when you scrimmage, do you thud scrimmage or do you tackle?
No, when we scrimmage, it's live.
Okay.
But we still don't cut tackle or cut block each other. So we'll have some moments of scrimmaging, not as much maybe as would you do previously, but we've got to do it for teaching purposes, but also for evaluation.
So running back situation, you said Jaheim's limited this spring, but you brought in a couple of transfers. What did you see with them on film? What have you seen in the little bit you've seen of them?
Jaheim, we know he's a proven guy, and I think he's going to have a great year. He's got a great skill set, and for what we do too. So excited about him. And then Hubbard is going to be a good player. We got a big guy in Ty Edwards. There's some young guys. LJ is a young guy, but I'm not sure we're. I like to have 3 guys that I know are ready to roll. I think there's some talent there. We could have it in there, but we also may need to bring another guy in as well.
So in balancing the thud versus what you can do, what you can't do, what specifically are you looking for in evaluation? In terms of that you can see in that full contact that you can't see just in shorts.
Yeah, football up front, especially where it all gets started, it's a game where big people are trying to move other big people against their will. And that involves technique. It also involves a certain level of toughness and, on the O-line and D-line. It's big people against other big people and then trying to move them against their will. And there are times we did that today. I like the approach that our line coaches, Coach McNeil, Coach Dresser, are doing, but there's a lot of work to be done there on both sides. I just didn't see the level of physicality, or I don't say physicality, just the movement. There's a machine down the weight room. I think is the greatest machine in football to work out in, is called Austin Leg Drive. You put plates on it, and it's on a rack, and then you hit the pad, and you actually have to drive it back about 15 feet. And it's just I think it's a piece of equipment that teaches guys to learn to move things that don't want to be moved. That's part of our key offensively, is O-line moving guys that don't want to be moved.
How many centers you got? How many capable centers do you need?
I think there's 4 or 5 that are getting snaps. I think you always got to rep that many. You can never have too many centers, too many guys that can snap. And we didn't have, well, I guess we said that. I think we had 1 bad snap today. We had 2 bad snaps, which is, I guess, when you look back, that's not too bad for the first day. But, the goal is to have none.
So who's working center? Robbie Martin working center? Who works center?
Landon, Livingston, Robbie's working it. And everything's new for all these guys. It's a new system and all that. And that's the hardest position to play because you got to snap and then also do all the stuff we do on our offense. But they're okay today, other than 2.
Rich, you mentioned bringing in older guys, grown men in the transfer portal. Is that something, I know this year pretty much by necessity, is that something you want to do every year? Do you like getting older guys a mix?
Yeah, I don't. That's a fair question. I don't have a particular formula that so many high school guys, so many portal guys, so many JUCO guys. I told the coaches at each position, and recruiting staff, just get the best players you can get. We hope they have more than 1 year, but if all they have is 1 year, we'll take them for 1 year. That's kind of what, back in the day, you might not have done that, but nowadays you almost have to do that. And then you, as the coaches, you got to do a good job of being able to have that 1 year or 2 year guy able to help you, and don't be too complicated. Like I said, you don't want to be the smartest guy in the room, have all kinds of fancy schemes and stuff like that. Just get guys that can play and give them something they can execute.
You talked last time about what the perception of the player themselves thinking, I'm playing hard, and what your expectations of playing hard. In the first few practices in the preseason conditioning, how wide is the gap between your perception and their perception?
Oh, it was pretty wide today. I told them afterwards, I think it's there. I've seen moments that I think it's there, but if you're soft, if you're soft mentally, physically, you're not going to make it. You'll stand out amongst your teammates and you'll stand out in the program, and it's not going to be the place for you. So it's pretty simple. In their version, they may not even know. Sometimes they don't even know what our definition is of being soft, but that goes back to us as coaches teaching them. This is we think that's soft, and then we have to explain to it why, and then hopefully they get it.
A lot of secondary guys, had a few coming back, but what do you think of the safeties, corners as a whole?
Yeah, we need the secondary play was not good, and but the guys that were coming back, hopefully they'll get better, and that's our job as coaches. And the guys we brought in, I think definitely bring in some competition. And it's I'm not watching last year's film anymore right now. As we get ready for game planning, we watch some of last year's stuff. But we're just trying to evaluate, because it's a whole new system with Coach Alley and the defense. But the competition is pretty good right there. Do we have a solid 8 or 9 right there? I couldn't tell you that, but I couldn't tell you that at any position.
You had a couple of those guys at Jacksonville State,
yeah,
Carter and Perry. So what do you see out of them? What did they do for you there?
Well, we know them as far as their ability and their mentality, and they also both got some time in this system with Zach a couple years ago. So that was obviously the reason we brought them, because they're kind of proven. But they're not handed a spot here like a starting job or anything like that. They've got to earn that. But they've got a little bit of advantage, as with Gerard Bowie and Jacob Barrett, because they know the expectations, I guess, and know how to do things. But I told the team today, I said, I'm not discouraged. I think I saw enough that hey, we got a chance. But it's got to be everybody all the time. Not every coach says that, but you got to coach it. I mean, if there's a moment of softness or weakness, mentally or physically, you have to address it every time, not 99% of the time, every time. And that's falls on us as coaches to make sure we address it.
I talked to you last week a little bit about putting that culture in place with the new program, and those Jacksonville State guys, obviously they're a little bit used to your culture down there, your way of doing things. You mentioned it there. How does that help, having them in the locker room, instill that new culture and mentality you want, having those guys that know the expectations?
Well, I think those guys will say, man, he may look crazy, and he is probably a little bit crazy, but there is some method to the craziness. You know what I mean? Or they might just say, hey, this dude just nuts. But, you know, hell, I don't care. I just want him to get coached. And like I said, I don't want to say that it's all bad, because I do think we have some good kids and we have some guys that are going to be really good players. We just got to have it all. You know, it's almost as if there's, if you don't get, if you just get 3/4 of them or half of them playing it the way you want to play, that's a good. No, it's got to be all of them all the time. And they all have. I'm convinced every player has it in them. I'm not talking about just here. I'm talking about everywhere. I think every player has that competitiveness in them, especially at this level, hell, Division I level. So it's our job. If I'm not doing our players any service if we don't coach and get the very best out of them. I failed them if that happens.
How soon you start needing to see leadership?
What's that?
How soon you start needing to see
Yeah,
leadership?
I'm a little different with that. Everybody said you got to have leadership. Hell, then leadership, that's a practice. That's my job. That's a coach's job. Where you need leadership is when you're not around. Locker room, summertime, weekends, whenever coaches aren't around, that's when you got to have leadership. Everybody says, well, who's showing the leadership on the field? Well, hell, it better be me. You know what I mean? The quarterback's got to be obviously a leader on offense because he's managing the, calling the plays and the cadence. And there's a linebacker on defense calling the defense. So those guys got to do that part of it's assumed, right? But, who's the leader up front? Well, hell, Coach Bicknell and myself. That's, I don't worry about that part of the deal.
Players have said, one of the worst things they ever want to be called is soft. And when you use that word, how much do you think that really kind of stabs at them and kind of kicks them into gear and makes them motivated to say, okay, I don't want to be called that?
Well, I had to remind them today, but it was the first day in pads. Right. And I'll probably have to remind them of the second day in pads and the third pads and the 30th day in pads and the 300th day in pads. I'll probably remind them. It's up to they don't even know it. They don't even realize it. And you have to show it to them. Say, hey, this is a guy that's playing with an hard edge, and this is a guy that's not. And I always, I'll tell you the story. I'm not gonna give you his name, but when I was here, again, everybody talks about the past. Whatever, the past is the past. But you ever hear the saying that if the puppy won't bite when he's a puppy, he won't bite when he's a dog? I used to believe that too. Well, I had a young player here, receiver, that he wouldn't bite as a puppy at all. And, it was just a year. He wouldn't. He was soft, wouldn't block nobody, but soft one. And then we did one drill, and it was like he had to go 6 reps in a row, and, we was challenging him and all that. And he went from being the softest wide receiver to being the best stock blocking wide receiver I've ever had to this day. And be a 3-year starter at wideout, and we won a lot of games with him. So he changed. He just grew up, matured, whatever. And that puppy wasn't biting when he was a puppy, but he bit when he was a dog. And so it learned guys can change, and guys can we can bring it out of them, I guess you could say.
How much do you practice in the spring special teams? I mean, both blocking, tackling, and obviously the special returners, all that.
Yeah, we don't do the kickoff and kickoff return. Those are the most dangerous. I hope they change it to the NFL model, but we'll do punt. We did punt today. We'll do field goal block, and we'll do punt block. Those will be the ones we feature on, and we'll get a day or two. We'll probably one day it'll be mostly a special teams day, and we'll kick off, but we probably won't have a live kickoff or kickoff return all spring. And but we'll do the punt and punt block every day.
Working with at returner?
Guys, we got a bunch of them. Rodney's back there, Bowie's back there, Man Singleton's back there. Who else? Those 3 I know stood out. All 3 slot receivers. There might be a defensive guy as well. And I think Ollie's a talented punter. It's we haven't been outside yet, so we haven't really punted much. But I think but there's also that mentality probably the part that got me fired up today the most was the punt period that we did, and some of the individual work we were doing in the punt period I thought was really soft, and it's not the players' fault. We just didn't teach it fast enough to how they're supposed to do their technique. So they'll be better the next day.
So this kind of answers that, but day 1, day 2, day 3, what is soft?
What is what?
What is soft, like so early? There's things that you were singled out, but like soft I could see coming through like in winter conditioning or like when you're going heavy.
No, I'm talking about like, you're supposed to physically, in football terms, punch a guy and knock him off balance, and instead you just kind of lean into him. Or instead of driving a guy down the field, you just kind of like bear hugging him. Instead of like going to thud a guy and legally hit head in front and above the waist and you knock him backwards, you just kind of jog and tag him. It's just, or if you got a guy that you're supposed to block and he's running here and you're running there and you're a wide receiver, and instead of making sure you get your guy and sprinting in front of him, you just kind of jog with him, and don't get your head in front so he doesn't make the tackle. So that's us as coaches. We have to explain what that is, and that's a good point. I'll probably need to remind my coaches, hey, we get these. They don't know. They may not know what our version of being soft is. Hell, we got to teach them. So I wasn't really happy with all the things I had to yell at today, but I didn't see anything that couldn't be corrected. You know what I mean? And starts us with the coaches.
Ideally, it happens once. Maybe that's inevitable, but like 3 practices from now.
Oh yeah. If I'm still complaining about the same things in practice 10, then it's a really cause for concern.
And you have officials out to oversee.
Yeah, we had some, but I didn't even recognize them. So I must have, we were really clean today. They threw 2 guys through a penalty for a holding or something else, and then the rest of them I think were just getting free hot dogs and a Coke or something. Hell, I don't know. No, I should have. I said hello to a couple of them, but I was screaming and yelling so much they probably thought I was a psycho. I didn't even get to say hello to them. I should have thanked them for coming, because they, I gotta do a better job of letting these, I kind of get in there and kind of like dominate the whole thing, and then they kind of sit back and go, oh yeah, I don't want to, I mean, I need to get them more involved, because I like having them there, because they bring a presence, but they also can help us get our guys better.
Rich, you mentioned you would like the kickoff to move to the NFL model. Is
that
a health and standpoint or health and wellness type thing? Or you like the style of it better?
Yeah, it's the most dangerous play in football. That's why they changed it in the NFL. And it's I know it could kind of be exciting, but even the NFL, they're still 70-some% of them are fair caught. I think we were second in the conference last year in kick returns. We only had 1. And then it must have been for like 28 yards. So I'm like, hey, we'll stay right there, fair catch every other one. So we didn't bring a lot of them back. But we do have, I think we have some return guys that can do that. But having a kickoff guy that can kick it out with the rules the way they are is really important. It has a lot of nervous times if you don't have that guy, and so that's why we recruited Ethan to come in, because we thought he could be that guy that could kick it out.
Is he capable of doing that?
Well, I hope. But what we saw on film, but we've been indoor the whole time. But he does have a strong leg, so that's. You talk to our special teams guys and Coach Kirkland and Coach Herring, that's what they're hoping too as soon as we get outside.
Speaking of new rules, NCAA proposed about faking injuries to see. Obviously, you play fast. What are your thoughts about if that rule's imposed? Does it need to be? That's
a good point. I mean, everybody's not like. I guess now they're thinking about making it, if your guy gets hurt after the whistle's blown or goes down, whatever, you have to take a timeout. If you don't have a timeout left, it's a 5-yard penalty. I agree that the guy goes out and make it. They say stay out the rest of the series, but I'm like, hell, that ain't. Make him stay out the rest of the quarter or the rest of the half. You know what I mean? They'll keep him from faking if because right now he goes out for one play and goes right back in. But if he's got to stay out the rest of the half, and officials don't want that because they don't want to manage that. Like, oh, he snuck back in, we didn't notice it, whatever. But If for health and safety reasons, if he's hurt, you're not. How are you hurting him by making him stay out? For his health, maybe you keep him out. So, I think if it's after the whistle, the ready for play whistle, what have you, then and he goes down, make him stay out the rest of the quarter, and give him a 5-yard penalty or take a timeout. Put all the penalties on him. Come on,
Defense, right?
Yeah. I mean, we've seen it against us, and everybody's probably seen it. I mean, you can watch it on film, and the guy standing there, and somebody on the sidelines is making a signal, and he just drops. Okay, what's going on here? No. Anything else?
You've been very kind of open and honest in the last few sessions. You're like, yeah, I'm yelling, and I should be better at this. And how long did it take to kind of come to that realization of this is who I am, these are some of the things I might need to be better at, and kind of work through that? Because I mean, like, even you said, like, oh, you're not going to put me on the earphone on the quarterback. I was be yelling the whole time. I'll give that to rep. How do you, and a lot of coaches don't do that. They just say, okay, I'm going to do what I do and whatever. But you seem to be someone who's like, okay, I'm going to make this better.
Well, I mean, we all have faults, right? We all have things that we should be better. Like I said, sounds like coach speak, but hell, I'm going to be better next week than I am this week. And I'm not maybe just how I coach, but some of the things we do. I think it's I would like to think some of the keys to the success that we've had, whether it was at Jack State or anywhere else, was because we learned, we grew, and we got better. And if I'm expecting my players to do that, I'm expecting my coaches to do that, I'm expecting myself to do that. So, but I'm not going to be perfect. The good thing is I'm in a good place. Like, here's what, and then we'll end with this, I guess, right? You ever hear an athlete or coach say, well, I don't have to prove myself, I already proven myself and all that kind of stuff. I'm like, just the opposite. If they're keeping score, you got something to prove. As a coach, as a player, whatever, if they're keeping score, we always have something to prove. And I think when you get to the point where you don't feel you have nothing else to prove, then you're probably never going to get better. I feel like I got something to prove. What that is, it might be different other people's mind to mine, but I always, every time we play, I feel like I got something to prove. And I want my teams and my staff to feel the exact same way.
Okay, we got time for one more question. So recruiting territory. We knew what you did before. You had some Alabama, Louisiana, Mississippi, but anything change in terms of your philosophy, recruiting territory? Is it important anymore in today's world?
If you circle the 2.5-hour drive area or 3-hour drive area from here, those are always going to be I don't want to say the easier ones, but the ones you don't want to miss on too much. There might be a kid that's like in our, that area that goes to Ohio State. Well, we tried, but he went to Ohio State. But I told the coaches, and it's different because you have a different person coaching and a different person recruiting, but I want them to recruit areas that they know. I don't want to, this day and age, you don't want to have time to, find a guy that's a sophomore, or you won't see us offering freshmen or in high school or sophomores in high school, but I tell them areas that they know and there's players at, then they got ties, just keep comfortable with that. 3-hour area within us, comfortable with that. Will we go down to Florida? We'll go down to Florida. Will we go down south? We'll go down south because we got a lot of ties there now. But there's a lot of good players in local Ohio, in western Pennsylvania, in the DMV, the Maryland, D.C. area, down south a little bit. But it's the formula, I think, has changed because half the time is looking at portals and transfers, and half the time is looking at high school guys. We don't want to neglect any of them. You know what I mean? I don't want to lose out on a player from any of the categories. So, but I got a big enough staff now. Hell, we got a whole recruiting staff. So, and we do recruiting. You got to recruit every day. And whether it's evaluating guys or communicating with guys, you got to recruit every day.
Okay.